for the long haul. I'm super excited to bring Dr. Mo in today. He's my hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment doctor here at AVIV. He changed my life for the better, and I'm excited just for you guys to get to know him, to understand why I trust him, his role that he played during the pandemic up in New Jersey, where he saw just the cascading effect of what long COVID, created and caused so many people to struggle with. So here you go. Here's Dr. Mo.
Thank you, Jen. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's so great to see you. And I remember those first days meeting you to now, and the transformation you made is miraculous. And we'll talk about all those steps. And I'm Dr. Mo Elamir, originally from New Jersey. Internal medicine is my board specialty, and I had my own private practice there, kind of the old school way, where I had my offices in Jersey City, and if you were my patient there, you got admitted to a local hospital, I rounded on you. And if you got discharged to a local rehab, I rounded on you. That doesn't really exist anymore. Now you're either just in the office, just in the hospital, and loved what I did, and taking care of my patients, having that continuity. And I had to see about 50 patients a day to keep that afloat. But always look for new opportunities. I wanted to be able to practice medicine in a way where I gave the time to the patients, because in that model, you have to, boom, 20 minutes, that's it, next patient, and kind of keep going. And, nothing ever interested me to kind of leave that practice. I built it up. And one day, my late father had a stroke, and that stroke led him to lose his speech. So he had aphasia. And I was researching new ways to heal the brain after a stroke. And I stumbled upon another doctor, Dr. Shai Efrati in Israel, using hyperbaric oxygen in a specific protocol to heal the brain and heal the body after a stroke. And read every paper, was really interested, but at the time it was only offered in Israel. And this was back in 2017. And they had a 2-year waiting list to get in. Wow. And fast forward to 2019, I saw an email from a recruiter saying, hey, there's going to be this new clinic in Central Florida using hyperbaric oxygen therapy to heal the brain, help the aging process, and help health span. So when I called and I found out it was Dr. Efrati's company, and he was the doctor interviewing people for the job, I was like, great, I'm applying for the job. What better way than to speak to the man himself? Mm-hmm. And got really interested and had some preliminary conversations, and decided to come down to Central Florida to kind of see what the clinic would look like. It was still under construction. Met the team and was convinced that this is going to be the future of treating medicine and treating diseases in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I was excited. And that was February of 2020.
Wow.
And
then I think I came, oh no.
You came later on.
2022.
Yeah. But in February 2020, everything was normal. Mm-hmm. And I go back home. A couple of weeks later, boom, the pandemic hits us. And I was in those trenches the first few months of the pandemic, in Jersey City, right next to New York City, right across the Hudson River. So that was one of the first epicenters of the pandemic in the United States. So it was the Wild West.
How hard was it as a doctor to get patients in for the first time, and then to just see them, what they endured, and just how quickly things unfolded?
It was a mix of chaos and frustration, frankly, because at the time, you couldn't get a simple swab and get a result within, minutes. Mm-hmm. I would swab somebody, and it would take 3 weeks to get the results. And by then,
a lot of damage was done.
A lot of damage was done. We didn't have treatments. They
still don't, to some extent.
And yeah, you're right. There's still a lot to be learned about it.
Yeah. But, and so the aftermath of when someone, because I experienced that when I went to the emergency room, and because I could breathe, they sent me home and told me, that I just would have to ride it out and figure it out for myself. And it was terrifying. It was confusing. It was hard. And being that I was a bone marrow transplant nurse and I understood how the healthcare system worked, and people were so quick to judge and ask the healthcare system for help. But what they really didn't know is that the world wasn't prepared. It wasn't just the healthcare system. It was the world. And it was terrifying. And I didn't even know what was happening to me. And it took me several years before they even told me, because I couldn't see, that I saw with my brain and not with my eyes. And that was the first cue to go to the brain. And I met Dr. Mo thanks to an emergency room nurse who, he was coming to speak the next day. And at that point, when you were coming to the hospitals and you were educating people, how did AVIV come to educate local hospitals? And
Yeah, it's education is a big part of what we do because if you've heard of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, it's been around for hundreds of years.
Mhm.
Scuba diving accidents, wound care, those kind of things.
Yeah, burns. I knew it like at Shands, or if I had kids with radiation burns, then we would send them to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment.
Right.
And so that's why I knew whenever I met you, I'm like, oh my God, this might work.
Exactly.
And so I get a lot of questions from people asking about hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, how they can get it done. And, because people call from all over the U.S., Texas, Colorado, California, and they're like, can I just do it at my local chamber? And for me, I understand people have limitations as what kind of care is available to them. But based on everything that I've learned, and you can correct me, is the protocols are all different. Like there's different types of chambers. There's hard ones. There's soft ones. There's ones where you sit in there individually. There's ones where it's just like a bigger room. There's ones where you wear masks and ones where you don't wear masks. But what I feel like coming here, not only just to receive the treatment, but it was like the staff. And I can remember telling you after I finished my treatment at Mayo, I said, you can't ask me about how I'm doing. You're not going to ask me about my symptoms or my pain. And automatically, you, with no question, you trusted that part of my healing process, which was what I learned in my central sensitization training at Mayo, which is a different episode. But anyways, it's like there's so many different parts or ways to treat with hyperbaric, but this protocol, it's completely personalized. So whenever I came in the door, it's like they customized my care with a team of experts, like a physical therapist, a nutritionist, a neuropsych doctor. Dr. Mo was watching me every step of the way. And then just the staff that is with you from the beginning and the end of your chamber experience, and it's the culture here for me that allowed me to not focus on my symptoms and allowed me to focus on my recovery and kept me moving forward. Because nowadays I find that any kind of treatment that is available, it's like people are chasing the highs and the lows of your disease. And with you, we've been able to kind of just focus on making small incremental steps moving forward. And not only that, like before I came here, there was no like actual measurement of my brain function. I had MRIs with lesions all over the place and in different places, and nobody, really trying to dig deeper. But you ordered a SPECT scan, which I want people to know about. Mm-hmm. Can you tell them what a SPECT scan is in the role it plays?
Absolutely. So, most people, when they get brain imaging, they're getting structural imaging, whether it's a CAT scan or an MRI. But functional imaging, often with these kind of cases, whether it's long COVID or even traumatic brain injury, post-concussion syndrome, sometimes you get a simple structural scan and say, hey, everything looks normal. But it's not based on how you feel. Mm-hmm. And that's where functional imaging comes in. So a SPECT scan is a metabolic CAT scan that looks at the metabolic function of the brain. And even within SPECT scans, there can be some differences. So one we use looks at mitochondrial function. The mitochondria is a powerhouse of energy metabolism in your cells, including the brain cells. So if you're having issues with cognition or brain fog or memory or processing, there could be dysfunction in those parts of the brain. And a SPECT scan is a great way to illustrate and show where that dysfunction is and where it can go to heal.
Yeah. And without even knowing before I got here, I understood based on my oncology side about healing and restoring and stimulating the stem cells to then I can give those stems. I could decide by what I chose to do to create the stem cells to go to the places I wanted them to go in my body. So unknowingly, I really didn't focus on the metabolic function. But afterwards, now I understand the importance of the metabolic function. Like in the healthcare system, I will tell you, I saw all audiologists. I was divided up into my systems, I was divided up into my symptoms, and then they all treated my symptoms, but nobody ever got to the root of the cause. And so now here I am. I couldn't even drive myself or take care of myself a little over a year ago. And now here I am creating a podcast with one of the doctors that helped me find my way to not just who I used to be, but just literally who I am. And it's a totally different person. And I'm so thankful for that, because when I met him, I was hopeless and I just didn't know how I was going to get the physiological changes outside of treatment. Like people, I had, psychologists and therapists that I talked to, and about my emotions and my anxiety and my depression and my confusion, and being like 44 years old and having dementia, like that was ridiculous. It was an invisible illness that you guys had a deeper understanding. And tell me how it actually works. Yeah. Like, what are you doing inside my brain when I'm going inside the chamber?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, not all hyperbaric is created equal. So we use large multi-place chambers to administer a very specific protocol. And that protocol is, when you go into a hyperbaric chamber, you get pressurized, and the pressure level we go to is 2.0 atmospheres. And if you're a scuba diver, that's like diving 33 feet under sea level. And there's a simple law, Henry's law. If you breathe a gas under pressure, that can increase the concentration of that gas going to the cells. So we're giving you 100% oxygen with a mask in 2.0 atmospheres of pressure. So your oxygen concentration goes up 17 times higher, which is good, getting oxygen to the cells that might not be getting it otherwise. But the protocol is we have you do that for 20 minutes and then take the mask off for 5 minutes in the chamber. In a multi-place chamber, the ambient air is normal 21%, just like we're breathing now. Mm-hmm. So when the mask is on, very high oxygen, mask is off, normal oxygen. So back and forth, 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week for 12 weeks. That protocol stimulates the body to produce these factors for healing. Mm-hmm. One of them is called hypoxia-induced factor. This factor usually gets released when the body senses a low oxygen state. And when the body senses low oxygen, it knows, hey, I'm going to have damage. I'm going to have cell death. Let me replace these dead cells with producing new stem cells. Mm-hmm. Stem cells are blank cells that can become any cell we want them to be. When we were young, we had lots of stem cells because we were growing. We could heal faster. As we age, we lose those stem cells. We lose the ability to heal. So this protocol stimulates your body again to heal again by producing new stem cells to replace the cells that got damaged, to grow new blood vessels to help better blood flow. Because mm-hmm. often with COVID, and this is something we knew from the early days, that acute infection is causing damage directly. The virus actually goes into the brain and mm-hmm. causes damage, but it also causes damage to blood vessels. Mm-hmm. And if you have damage to blood vessels, for example, in the brain, not only are you having damage at that moment, but chronic lack of blood flow over time causes more and more indifferent symptoms over time.
Right.
That's why the official definition of long COVID, you have to wait 3 months from your initial infection and have those symptoms for at least 2 months. And those symptoms could be different. And that's because of that physiology. You're having acute damage and then chronic damage. Yeah. And that damage also comes from the immune system response to the virus. Mm-hmm. That's something we saw very clearly in those first few days of the pandemic. Your immune system is hyper responsive. The cytokine storm that you hear about, that is damage to the cells, damage to the different parts of the body over time as well. And people still have that chronic damage going forward. So if you can find a way to heal that damage, reduce that inflammation, grow new stem cells to replace the cells that got damaged, grow new blood vessels so you have better function going forward. And the protocol also stimulates something called mitochondrial biogenesis.
Yes.
So we just talked about the mitochondria, that energy metabolism. And actually recently, Amsterdam University published a study where they took biopsies of the muscles of long COVID patients versus a control group.
Oh, wow.
And what they saw was decreased mitochondrial function.
Wow.
In the
wow, I would love to see that.
Absolutely. And that just came out a few months ago. So this really confirms what we kind of know already. You know, the people that have brain fog from long COVID, yes, we understand that because of the damage of the brain. But often these people have significant fatigue. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, the powerhouses of your cells, if they're not functioning, you're going to be exhausted just from a simple thing like taking a shower.
Yeah.
And now we know why.
Yeah.
So if we can grow new mitochondria, then you can help that energy issue. And that's what we do. Our protocol does all those things. New
Well,
cells.
it's funny you say it, because what I tell people, I was like, energy is money. And if you can't make it, you can't spend it. We can't borrow from yesterday. We can't borrow from tomorrow. And so Sarah Myhill, she has a book on MECFS, and then she helps you learn to think and see your body in a different way. Because if we did an MRI of my body, it would, like, to some extent, it would look normal. You'd see where my heart, my lungs, my eyes, whatever, but you would never see that metabolic function.
Correct.
And so just like you were saying, it's like both the brain and the immune system can learn bad things, and they have to be retrained.
Right.
And so just like those negative thoughts and feelings and depression, the immune system can learn to attack you and be, like you said, hyper vigilant and cause destruction. And when I first came here, I couldn't feel my fingers, I couldn't feel my feet, and I used to be afraid of getting up every morning because it was like stepping on glass. And so within the first month of my treatment, it was actually the first time I had a relief from the burden of all the injuries. And that's what I want people to know. There's a burden of the virus in your body since you actually had a live viral infection. Right. And then you have cellular injury, and you have actual, like, things where even though I look normal, it's an invisible injury. Right. My nervous system, my GI, like every piece of me was affected. And what I also learned about your metabolic function and how I use the Whoop with that is, instead of doing the recommended strain for the average person, I, by myself, was like, if I did 60%, then I tend to, like, I'm starting to build up a little savings over time, and I'm increasing my function. Well, then I came to me the other day, I was like, basal metabolic function, that is 60% of the energy. I was like, oh my God, why didn't you know this? Why didn't you know this? But it's just like, now thinking about just using your energy for just taking care of your own body and your own function unapologetically, because everybody we knew before we were infected had high expectations of us. And what we can't see is the amount of destruction that's taken place, not just on a physical level, but on a cellular level, and my ability to produce healthy cells. And so that's where I feel like I won the war here at AVIV, because I was finally able to outnumber the senescent cells, the zombie cells, with healthy cells. Correct. And so I was like, heck yeah. I was so, so many people question, like, what it's worth and what it costs. And I literally lost several years of my life. And I don't think I would have been on the same trajectory without you and without AVIV and without everybody here, because in this culture and in this society, number one, people didn't believe us that we actually were struggling and had a problem. We were lying, we were dramatic, we were part of a political agenda. But it was just like, we used something that we knew that helped the brain in other ways. And it was just like, for me, I was just trying to find similar illnesses and similar interventions that might help me. Right. But this did help me. Yeah. And it's just like, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So why don't you just tell them about, my brain, like what kind of changes did you see in my brain?
Absolutely. So when we did that initial evaluation, because anybody that comes in, number one, we believe you. Mm-hmm. We know what you have is real. But we want to objectively measure it and show what has happened and what can be done. So part of that assessment, we did the structural MRI. First, you got to make sure structure is okay. But that SPECT scan that we did for you, we saw dysfunction, metabolic dysfunction in multiple parts of the brain. But there's a classic part of the brain that gets affected. And when you think about the virus goes up the nose and it crosses a bony barrier called the cribriform plate. That separates your nasal passage to the lower part of your frontal lobe. Well, if you think about your sense of smell, perfume, good food, they have chemicals in the air, they go up your nose, and they can cross that bony plate because there's little holes. Well, the virus says, hey, there's an open access to the brain. Let me walk right in. And it goes in and actually gets into the lower frontal lobe and the prefrontal cortex. So that's why people have brain fog and even depression and anxiety. And so we saw those parts of the brain affected. And the way the colors work, red and pink is really good, and as you get down to green and blue, that's pretty bad. So we saw a lot of green and blue in those areas of your brain. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I said is, I believe you, and there's the proof. That is a classic area of the brain affected. And this is why you're feeling all the symptoms that you've had.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one part of the assessment. But of course, we saw your metabolic function with the cardiopulmonary exercise test.
Oh, yeah.
We did the gait analysis. We did the blood work. We did all those things because it really is an interdisciplinary approach.
And I think the most important thing is you looked at like my genetics, but you also looked at like the previous viral loads that I actually had, which people don't know with long COVID, what increases your risk. And that is a big risk factor, just like they're associating Epstein-Barr virus with MS and like they're starting to create all these direct connects. And so any previous live viral infection you have ever had is going to be with you for the rest of your life.
For sure. And viral load is the key. You know, that's why one person can get more sick than the other. That's why one person can get residual symptoms or long COVID versus the other. That's a big part of it. Because, you know, think about it. You know, if there's a war, if there's a very small army, pretty easy to defeat. But if it's a huge army, it's going to be much harder.
Yeah.
And the viral load is the size of the army.
Yeah. And it was just like I had multiple viral loads coming from different directions, attacking the same systems in their own way. And it was just like, oh my God, that was just so hard for me to imagine what was happening to me, that I don't ever want to feel that way again. And so that's part of my motivation to kind of restore my metabolic function, number one, and also create a community of people who are not just going to focus on toxic positivity or, you know, I'm not here to like complain and focus on what's wrong. I'm just completely focused on the solutions. And this was the biggest game changer that gave my body what it needed. And this is just one component of it. You know, there's mental barriers, there's going back home to live with people who knew you one way and then you're a completely different person. And, you know, I literally had to forget who I was and pretend like I was learning everything again for the first time for it to run smoothly in my mind. And
it's like learning how to walk again.
Learning how to walk again, learning how to ride a bike again, learning how to do all the things. And when I rappelled down a mountain this summer with my kids, I was like, oh my God, I'm that mom again. I'm that mom again that can do adventures.
You know, and then everybody that does the program does well. But the ones that really give it their all have the right approach. Because, you know, you come in every day, you're doing your hyperbaric training, therapy, but there's neurocognitive training in the chamber. There's physical training.
Oh, the witty sims. That was like my favorite.
Oh, yeah. It's a dual task where you're connecting your mind and body again. Because we're human beings. We're doing things at the same time. We're multitasking. And long COVID can take that away from you. You can only focus on one thing at a time. So when we do that witty sim, you're on the treadmill, you're physically exerting yourself, and then doing cognitive training at the same time. It's retraining your body to multitask.
Brain and body. And it's like, now I let my body lead. I've learned to know whenever I've overextended myself, and I have the confidence in saying no and understanding my worth at the same time. Because I think just because of our society, we always feel like we have to say yes. We always have to do more. And I just really learned how to prioritize, like taking care of myself and communicating and being transparent with other people about my abilities, not my limitations, but my abilities. And my ability to move forward is to now share my story with everyone about people like you who care. And you're there to kind of help us figure out what we need to do. And I remember it was really difficult at the end because I'm done with hyperbarics and I'm not coming back and I'm not getting the same kind of treatment anymore. And it's a hard transition. I know. I was like, maybe I just need to be in here like 10 more visits. Yeah. And he's like, no, you're good. And so it's because like over time, like first you heal in the first month, and then in the second month, you learn how to rev up the engine of your stem cell production. And then in the last month, you're kind of, you know, producing stem cells on steroids. So that way for the next 6 months after you complete your treatment, you can continue to produce stem cells at a higher rate than you ever have. And so it was up to me to decide what I wanted to do with those stem cells.
Right. You had to guide them.
I had to guide them. And so that's why the long COVID journey, and this is one part and one essential piece in your recovery and your community, because I also have been able to reach back out to anyone and everyone here that I came across. And you're busy, so it's not like you can always get back to me, but I always know that you guys care about me. And the long COVID community went without so much for so long, and we still have a long ways to go.
For sure.
But this is an amazing step moving forward. And do you have anything you want to tell anybody with long COVID?
We kind of touched on it a few times, but when you meet one long COVID patient, you meet one long COVID patient. Everybody is unique. How you were before you got COVID is one factor. How your body's able to adapt is another factor. To your point, don't just say yes. Be succinct and be your own advocate.
Yeah.
Because often you'll be dismissed, and then if you get to somebody who's recognizing the disease, okay, follow this protocol. Well, how does this protocol different for one person and the other? Mm-hmm. You really have to have an individualized approach, and what you're doing, spreading the awareness is critical. That's why we're still giving lectures. Mm-hmm. We're still educating the medical community in addition to anybody else that wants to learn. And I offer it to anybody. Yeah. Whether you can do the program or not, whether you're local or you want to do a virtual consultation, I give free consultations to everybody. Okay. So anybody that wants to speak to us, we're happy to help and guide. And if we can help you here, great. If not, we can give you some guidance too.
And I want to briefly mention, because when I first came, that's when vaccine injuries were a thing, yeah. Right? And nobody knew, again, it was a new wild, wild west. And you guys help people with vaccine injuries as well.
I have a saying, the brain does not discriminate what hurts it. So whether it's a live virus, whether it's a football player in a concussion, or a bad response to a vaccine, damage is damage. The brain.
Yeah, you told me, you're like, it doesn't matter what kind of car hit you, whether it was red or black. You got hit by a car, and so you need the same support. And so I just think that universally, you guys have this approach to treat everyone as an individual person, understand what their goals are and their abilities, and to help them move forward. What would it be like if someone were to reach out and then come to AVIV and to be assessed? What would that be like?
Yeah. So it starts with a conversation, and no matter what somebody's coming in for, I ask them, if you were suitable for this treatment and you did it, by the end of it, what is on your wish list? What would you like to accomplish? Mm-hmm. If you say, I want to be 10 feet tall with red hair, sorry, this is not the right program for you. I can't do that. But, most people, the first response is, I just want to be me again, before COVID, whether it's the brain fog, the physical, the fatigue. And we say, okay, let's go through our assessment. And we mentioned the SPECT. So we'll do an MRI of the brain, a SPECT of the brain. We'll do in-depth cognitive testing, see where your cognition has really struggled. The medical exam is critical because, it is possible to have two things at the same time. Maybe.
And I would say too, just getting my evaluation here, it was that I found out everything I needed to know.
Right. And that's why we have that interdisciplinary approach. So you see myself, the medical doctor, you'll see the neuropsychologist, you'll see the physical therapist to work on gait and pain. The exercise physiologist is critical too. We'll put you on a treadmill or a bike, see what your performance is, what you're able to do. And we will use that to guide how we train you throughout the treatment. Mm-hmm. The dietitian is also important as well. So 3 to 5 days to do all those tests. A week later, we sit together, and an hour and a half, we go through everything. I show your brain slice by slice. We go through the testing, say, okay, this is what's happened, and this is how we're going to treat you specifically. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's the same is the oxygen you're breathing in the protocol that we're doing, because that's what we need. 2 hours a day in that fluctuation protocol, 5 days a week for 12 consecutive weeks. Our research, our data, time and time again, we have a longitudinal study now that we published, 1 year follow-up. Yeah. Where people from the original study that did well, we followed them up a year later. Not only did they maintain, but some did even better.
I think so.
And when people go through the treatment, yes, you're doing the hyperbaric, you're doing cognitive training, physical training, diet, medical follow-up. It's about 3.5 hours a day here in the clinic. Mm-hmm. But we need that approach so you can guide those cells, guide that healing. As you mentioned, when people finish, they're a little bit apprehensive because they have that structure and support. But you said it best. Those stem cells are going to keep going up for weeks and months after you finish. Mm-hmm. And we actually will follow up with you every month. And if you're local, you can even come and work out here now. But in 6 months, we reevaluate. Cognitive testing, physical testing. Most people do better at the 6-month follow-up than right after the program.
And I think I remember I did really well. I kind of broke a little bit of...
You broke some records.
Yeah, I did. And I think it was just the culmination of everything that I knew moving forward into it. Because being a bone marrow transplant nurse and pediatric oncology nurse, I already kind of understood the assignment of what we were doing. And just we're getting down to a cellular level. And it's just like the body was, like I always tell people, it's like you have to use your body the way it was created. And like you guys kind of unlocked, the magic of our bodies and our ability to heal. And you focused on a lot of what I call ancestral living. It's just like you made us walk, you made us talk, you made us do the things. Like so many of us can just sit at home and be comfortable and do very little. And that actually is kind of the opposite of what we should be doing. And so I focus on like zone 2 training and education and learning. It's like use it or lose it, That's right. And once you get here, it's just like you don't want to stop because you have all the support that you need. Right. And that's what I really wanted people to know about AVIV. And I wanted people to know about you because I'm coming to you at my lowest low when I don't know how I'm going to live to see another day. I don't know how I'm going to take care of my kids. I don't have my own identity. My bed is my best friend and my worst enemy. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. But if you would have told me I would be here today doing this, I'd be like, maybe. No, I wouldn't have believed you.
And, when people tell me about their wish, I say, I want to be what I was before COVID. And with most diseases, I tell people there are 3 people. There's you before your injury, whether it's COVID or a stroke or whatever it is. There's you after it. And then there's you after this program. My goal is, of course, I want that third person to be like that first. But that third person could be even better. Yeah. And I think for you,
that third person has some healthy boundaries and has some great goals. And I would say definitely that first person would try to do everything on her own and feel like, she couldn't rely on anyone else. But this person knows she can rely on people, and she's learned to trust herself. So that allows me to trust you and other people. And just to know that it's, even though it feels like no one cares, there are people that care. And there are people who have solutions. And it's literally, you're not doing something new that we didn't know about. We're just using it in a different way. And the entire protocol is set up for our success, for your success. And I'm still waiting to run and to dance. Like those are the 2 things, symptom free. I'm very close to reaching that goal. And when I do, I'm going to run like a 5K. I'll start there and then keep moving on and moving forward. And it's just like, I'm living my next life. It was sad to let the older version of me go, but this version of me is way more connected and serving so many more people. And that's what this is a gift. You gave me your time so I could give this to the people out there that just really need the information of how they can really solve the problem. I always say they break us up into symptoms and systems, but they don't get down to the root. Yeah. And here we're focusing on a cellular level, how to improve your overall function.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even though I never met you before COVID, I know you today is better than ever. Yeah. And your journey has been inspirational for us here at the clinic. Your journey has helped others after you, and you're continuing to help. And I'm with you with the 5K. When you're ready,
let's go.
I got you. We're going to do it together.
All right. So thank you everyone for tuning in to Longevity for the Long Haul. This has been Dr. Mo Alamir here at AVIV Clinics. Comment down below if you have any questions and we'll be happy to answer them together, right?
For sure. I'll be here anytime you need me.
All right. Thanks again.